The global macro landscape, viewers, which has been now jolted by this sharp escalation in US-Venezuela tensions. Washington's move goes beyond oil. It also aims to curb China, Russia and Iran's influence as well. Venezuela's vast oil and gas and critical mineral reserves now make it a key geopolitical flashpoint. And to understand more on this, we're now joined by Mr. Narendra Taneja, the energy expert with us. Warm welcome to you, Mr. Taneja, and good to have you with us. Well, first up, help our viewers really understand how do these US actions in Venezuela really affect the global oil supply and crude prices in the near term. We've so far not seen any knee-jerk reaction on the oil prices. In fact, it's slightly lower. So no flare-up there, which is a big relief for oil importing countries like us. But what could it happen over the near term?
Well, in short term, actually, we don't really see any negative impact in the sense because, Venezuela may have the largest oil reserves in the world, which are in the region of about 300 billion barrels to 400 billion barrels. But it's a very small producer. They produce hardly 800,000 barrels of a day. And if you look at the list of the major country exporting oil, they're not even among the top 20. So they're not a significant player in terms of the global oil supply system, but they're a very important player when it comes to the medium to long term horizon. So right now, if you look at no impact at all, but at the same time, the fact that Americans have moved in there and President Trump has made very clear that American companies are going to move into Venezuela and, and invest in so on and so forth, which means oil production in time to come, maybe from 1.5 years to 2 years to 2.5 years from out of Venezuela will go up, which means that it may go up to even 2.5 to 3 million barrels a day. That is going to be a significant contributor then to the global supply system. And what does that mean? If there is a new kind of, contributor, a new player in the supply system, Venezuela, that means more oil. And more oil means basically prices will come under pressure and will start further down. So that's, if you look at from the Indian viewpoint, as you said, since we are energy deficit, third largest importer of oil, third largest consumer of oil, it's not a bad news. It's geopolitically speaking, we are in the Wild West. Very difficult to decode things and analyze. But given that, hopefully that as far as oil is concerned, that's not a bad news for us.
Not a bad news for us. What about Indian fuel prices? Because remember, we're already reducing our imports from Russia. And Donald Trump, even as of overnight, has indicated that Indian Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, should make him happy by completely telling them, we are not importing any oil drop from Russia now. Since the narrative is still the same, how does one really anticipate whether these blowing tensions with Venezuela, what kind of an impact can it happen on Indian fuel prices?
Well, Trump is Trump. Even God can't make him happy. I mean, what does he wants? I mean, he's moved into, imagine moving into a sovereign country, kidnapping the president of the country along with his wife and bringing him to New York and say, you got to face American law. He's not American national. But that's the world we are in today. But to answer your question now, you see, there is plenty of oil available in the world. Demand is not rising except from few geographies like India, Middle East, and a few others. So we don't really need to worry. There's plenty of oil available. If Venezuelan oil starts flowing further more into the market, that's good news. Guyana oil is there. Guyana is just next to Venezuela. And and President Trump has already threatened Colombia, which is also a significant, contributor to the global supply system. When you look at the horizon and put everything into the basket, geopolitics, demand, supply, and everything, what you get out of it, as far as the supply is concerned, we don't need to worry. As far as the price is concerned, in short term at least, we don't need to worry. But as far as the overall geopolitics is concerned, power play is concerned, and all that's we need to worry because we are now in a kind of into a world where it's very difficult to predict future. And especially for a large economy like India, we are globally integrated now. You see, so since we are very globally integrated, the kind of games and the kind of, things which are going on out of Washington, D.C., not only India, the entire world is very worried about. So when you look at strictly oil, we don't need to worry too much in terms of price. But when we look at the overall global geo-economics landscape, you see worries and worries all the way.
Sure. You did point out that there is no worry when it comes to the supply. In fact, this is in a way good news when Venezuela's oil will also come into the market because right now the production is very low. OPEC Plus has constantly been holding the output steady as well. In case one has to just foresee what could be the prices in 2026, how would you really assess that, sir?
Well, I think, with what has happened in Venezuela, it has put OPEC on defensive in the sense that because it's not only Venezuela. Basically,
Okay.
Trump is trying to be the boss of the hegemon of the entire Western Hemisphere. And what does Western Hemisphere mean in terms of oil? Major oil producer Canada, major oil producer Mexico, major oil producer Brazil, and couple of in Guyana and couple of other. That means they are all going to be part of the American, geopolitical and geo energy play, and that
Yeah.
means that's going to be a kind of informal bloc which is going to put pressure on cartel called OPEC. Is that a good news for importers like India? Not a bad news. So OPEC is going to be under pressure, but at the same time, OPEC is very good in playing this game. While when come to President Trump or the United States under him, highly unpredictable. They don't play long games like OPEC. They play short games. Therefore,
Yeah.
it's going to be very interesting to watch.
Absolutely. And do you anticipate then that US and the narrative from the White House will be the one that will decide as to what happens to the energy sector, how the prices flow in, even in the next 3 to 5 years per se?
Well, that's a very, very interesting question. You see, short answer to your question is yes, because President Trump does not want oil to go beyond $60 per barrel. $60 per barrel works well for American economy to keep inflation in check. At the same
Yeah.
time, $60 per barrel keeps Russia under pressure, keeps Saudi India under pressure, geopolitically speaking. But at the same time, with the kind of the new geopolitical chessboard which is emerging, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, these Gulf countries are not going to be that important in time to come, in years to come for the US, which means that they will need America more than America will need them. And that means that they will have to listen to America. And America does not want oil prices to be more than $60 per barrel. American economy is used to cheap oil. And Trump is trying to do everything possible to make sure oil never goes beyond $60. Venezuela, he has not gone to Venezuela for anything. He has gone there just because it has got oil. Had there been no oil in Venezuela, President Trump wouldn't have really even bothered to look at the map of Venezuela. It's all about oil.
It's all about oil. Help me understand, what impact are you seeing on China's oil supply chain, considering it imports maximum of the oil from Venezuela? What alternative sources could China really turn to after the strike as well?
Well, that's strategically speaking an important question. I mean, there are many who are saying he's doing all that he's doing to strangle, kind of Chinese economy in terms of energy supplies and so on and so forth. With the entire Western Hemisphere now coming more or less an American influence or under footprint, and that means China will have to look at other sources of energy. And at the same time, as I said, the Gulf countries will have no option but to actually get even closer to the United States for its security, for overall security, because there is Iran and there are other countries, which means that America is going to exploit it and is not going to really help China. Therefore, if you look at the data of the last 3 months, China probably could sense it. They had been buying oil left, right, and center from every country and storing it. They have been storing oil like mad, last 3 months. And at the same time, Venezuela owes $80 billion to America, to Russia and China. So what's going to happen to the $80 billion? By the way, they also owe $1 billion to us. That's a different story altogether. But this is the kind of scenario. So overall, if you look at it, you look at the emerging landscape from China, from Beijing, is very, very risky and very, very tricky. So China is worried. And if you look at the overall game, China is at the disadvantage as far as the whole game is concerned at this stage. In short term, China is not the gainer. But as far as India is concerned, there are lots of things to worry. This Wild West geopolitics is bad for us, is not good for us. But as far as oil price is concerned, that's not a bad news.
If you like the video, do like, comment, share and subscribe.